When Donald Trump says the quiet part out loud, exactly how loud does he have to say it for Republicans to believe him? How about now that he's actually doubling down on his outrageous comments that immigrants, he said, are, quote, poisoning the blood of our country? He's not mincing words anymore. He's not even running with any of the ridiculous defenses that Republicans have spoon-fed him this week, including that maybe he wasn't talking about immigrants at all, but rather Democratic policies or fentanyl overdoses. Again, we do not play these comments lightly, but here's what Trump said in Iowa last night so that everyone, even his staunchest defenders, know that there is no excuse and that he meant what he said the first time.
They come from Africa. They come from Asia. They come from South America, but not just South America. They're all over the world. They dump them on the border and they pour into our country. And it's true. They're destroying the blood of our country. That's what they're doing. They're destroying our country. They don't like it when I said that. And I never read Mein Kampf. They said, oh, Hitler said that in a much different way. They're destroying the fabric of our country. And we're going to have to get them out.
Joining our conversation, professor of politics and journalism at Morgan State University and host of the podcast A Word with Jason Johnson. Jason Johnson is here, plus political strategist Matthew Dowd. Jason, guess we don't have to be confused anymore about what he meant.
Look, Alicia, I've never been confused. Remember, this is the guy who said there were decent people on both sides when it attacked, Charlottesville, which was my alma mater, University of Virginia. But I think the bigger issue is this. It's not just the realization that we have at least 30% of the country that's okay with openly Nazi rhetoric. It's not just the fact that the man has spent the last 7 years using this kind of terminology. Remember, back in November, we were talking about him referring to immigrants as vermin. It's the idea that we are now at a point in public discourse where a man who is going to be the nominee for one of the main political organizations in this country has to vocally say, and by the way, I didn't get this from Mein Kampf. Think about that. Think about the fact that we're in that particular point of conversation. Like if you met someone who said, hey, I didn't get these from clubbing, I didn't get these mittens from clubbing baby seals over the course of the weekend. If you have to explain that, it suggests that we probably think you do club baby seals. So I think what's important strategically and from a coverage standpoint is that we recognize that we're not just dealing with a racist. Lots of people in America are okay with racists. We're dealing with an authoritarian. We're dealing with someone who does not fundamentally believe in the American project. And that's always how we have to discuss it, because this isn't going to stop. I mean, if he could get away with just saying the N-word and any other slur, he'd get away with it anytime soon.
Yeah, and Matt Dowd, on the extreme and extremely alarming side of this, you have Republican Senator Tommy Tuberville, who said yesterday, this is according to Punchbowl News, that he is, quote, a bit disappointed that Trump wasn't tougher than that in his recent comments. I mean, faux ignorance from some Republicans, that is bad. This is an endorsement which is particularly scary, given that we know that type of racist, xenophobic rhetoric has led to violence in this country before.
Yeah, I mean, a couple of things here. I mean, what I'm amazed about this whole thing is the first part is he didn't mention Slovenia or Czechoslovakia or Europe. He mentioned Asia, Africa, and South America. So in case people were confused that he meant all immigrants, he doesn't mean all immigrants. He means certain immigrants in the course of this. If you go back and look at the last month or so of stuff that Trump has said, first he says, I'm going to use the Justice Department to punish my enemies. And the GOP response to that is, he didn't really mean that. And then Trump says, I'm going to be dictator for the day. And the GOP response to that is, he's just joking. And now Trump sits there, is probably after he hears all that, he rubs his chin. He goes, dang, the GOP doesn't seem to get what I really want to do. I guess I need to quote Hitler. And then he quotes Hitler. And the GOP's response is, two fingers going in 5 different directions and a bunch of gibberish in the course of this. Donald Trump seems to be the one that wants to clarify every time somebody questions what he's doing. He goes one step further to clarify what he wants to do. And what he wants to do, just exactly what Jason said, is put in place a dictatorship that accomplishes his goals and the goals, unfortunately and disgustingly, of 30% of the country.
Yeah, disgustingly indeed. Jason, Vice President Harris, she joined our colleague Lawrence O'Donnell here on MSNBC last night. Not sure if you caught it. I want to take a listen to her response to Trump's comments, speaking as the daughter of immigrants herself.
I was raised knowing that there will be some people who will use their voice in a way that is meant to dehumanize, meant to suggest that the vast majority of us don't have anything in common, when in fact the vast majority of us have more in common than what separates us. It is language that I think people have rightly found similar to the language of Hitler.
Right. I mean, Jason Johnson, I wonder the extent to which they need to engage on this.
I don't think they need to engage that much, Alicia, because at the end of the day, for me, the biggest concern that I have, and I had a conversation with a colleague who was a real swing voter in Georgia just like a couple of weeks ago, white woman, middle-aged, voted for Obama, voted once for Trump, those sorts of things. And her big concern is, she said, I know a lot of people who would love to vote for Donald Trump if he just wasn't saying racist things all the time. We don't have to. Those of us who care about democracy, the Democratic Party, they don't have to dwell on these things too long, because Trump's going to keep saying stuff like this. The biggest concern of Vice President Harris, the biggest concern of Joe Biden, the biggest concern of Jamie Harrison should be, what do you do about inflation? What do you do about immigration? What do you do about the wars happening? What do you do about Ukraine? To the degree that anyone addresses the fact that we already know that Donald Trump is a racist, the only response should be, is any of that racism going to bring down inflation? No. Is any of that racism going to do anything about your gas prices? No. Why would you vote for a guy who's more concerned with fighting an imaginary wave of people coming into the border than somebody who's actually fighting for your wages in this country? And if every single Democratic conversation over the next 10 months takes Trump's racism and folds it into how it's not solving the problems of this country, maybe Joe Biden becomes president again.